One of the reasons I think that people are so eager to dissociate themselves from conservatism, even as they accept the things that conservatives are saying, is because of that Christian underpinning that kind of put Jane Austen off, even though she was, I believe, a devout Christian. That it puts them off because it says things about us that we don't like to hear. It says that our fleshly desires lead us into sin. It's not just lust. We always think of lust first, but greed is also a fleshly desire. Envy is something that you feel in your flesh. How many times have you said to yourself, well, I don't really want my friend to fail, but something in me wants my friend to fail. That envy it's something that we feel in our flesh, and maybe it is evolutionary, that kind of competitive envy. But it's not necessarily conducive to a good, happy spiritual life. And so conservatives are always acting shocked that when leftists who are materialism is inherent in leftism, when they start offering people stuff, free money, or when they start saying things like, oh, we'll only tax people who make over $400,000. And everybody goes, yeah, over four, they're playing to our worst self. And so of course they're going to succeed more easily because that is the way the world works. The world is driven by sin, what Christians call sin. And nobody likes to talk about that. We like to talk about we try to put it in other kind of terms, but that is exactly what it is. Sin, it comes from a word in Greek meaning missing the target. It doesn't mean you're a bad boy. It means you're not getting to the person that you were made to be. That is the target. The target is God made you a certain person. The fulfillment of that person is the act of becoming that is the meaning, purpose, and direction of your life, the telos of your life. But if you miss that target, that's hamartia, that's sin. And that's the kind of sin that I'm talking about, not like you're a bad boy or a naughty boy. So Joe Biden has canceled student debt for like 40 million people or so. This is going to cost something, could cost upward of $600 billion. And he's done this in a completely lawless way. He has done it by saying, I do it. I do this thing. He said he's used some law that says that there's an agency that can do this in a case of an emergency, and we're in a COVID emergency, which is just ridiculous. The question is, even though it's a completely lawless thing, there may be no one with standing to sue and bring it before the courts. So it's going to be an open question whether it can be stopped, okay? But still, it's lawless. And that in itself is a bad thing. I'm very in favor, by the way, of canceling this debt. I have two sons-in-law who are both highly paid attorneys with student debt, and I'm looking forward to Uber drivers paying off their debt. I think that's a great thing. I'm going to vote Democrat so I can stick it to the working class and behave in favor of the rich. No, I'm obviously joking. But, this is what they're going to do is they're going to ultimately transfer money from the 2/3 of the country who don't go to college to the third of the country who tends to be more wealthy, who do go to college, and then they're going to tax those people with the $80 billion they're pouring into the IRS. They keep saying we're going to tax the rich, but most people think if you're making $400,000 a year, you're rich. That's not what rich is. Bezos is not going to pay a dime in taxes, and every dime that he does pay is going to be charged to you when you order on Amazon. So he's not going to pay a dime. The rich aren't worried. It's the middle class and the upper middle class who may look rich to people below them, but aren't, who are going to be taxed. And so ultimately what socialism does is it gets rid of that middle class, and there's only the poor, and then there's the rich on whom the poor depend. And that's how the rich stay rich, by the poor coming and saying, please, sir, may I have some gas for my car? No, I must fly off in my private jet to discuss global warming, my friend. I'm sorry, my little friend, but you'll just have to eat bugs and call me later. That's the world that socialism produces, not one time, not two times, but every time it comes into power. And you can see it coming. The taxes from the money going into the IRS will be used to bleed the upper middle class, and these kinds of transfers of wealth to Joe Biden. Most of the guys who are going to profit from this, a lot of them are in Joe Biden's staff, these college kids with a lot of debt. But, a lot of people can talk about the economics, better than I can. But what bothers me about it is the morality. And when we talk about morality, immediately people get their backs up. What are you, some kind of Christian? Yes, I am some kind of Christian. And I am concerned about morality because when we become immoral, everything falls apart. Our freedoms fall apart. When John Adams said our Constitution is for a moral and religious people, he was not kidding around. When you make a deal with somebody, That is a sacred thing in a free country. In a free country, when you and I agree to something, I'm going to pay you this, or you're going to loan me this at this interest, or we're going to get married. That is a contract, and that contract is sacred between us because it's part of our freedom. It's part of what makes us individuals capable of making arrangements between ourselves. When the government comes along and says, well, you agreed to get married, but there's no fault divorce, so if your wife suddenly says, I don't want to be married to you anymore, she can just say it. That is the government breaking that sacred bond between people so that we can no longer trust one another and no longer feel that our work and our agreement and our word is good. Our word is no longer good because government is destroying our contracts. These people borrowed money. They weren't cheated. They weren't lied to. They knew what they were doing. They borrowed money from us. The money is money they take from the government. It's our money. It's not the government's money. The government took it from us, paid it to them, gave it to them with an agreement that they would pay it back. Now they're saying you can't have your money back. And if you already paid, well, here's Elizabeth Warren explaining what happens if you've already paid your money. Cut 12.
Hello here. I just want to ask one question. My daughter's getting out of school. I've saved all my money. She doesn't have any student loans. Am I going to get my money back? Of course not. So you're going to pay for people who didn't save any money, and those of us that did the right thing get screwed.
No, it's not anybody got screwed. When we started,
of course we did. My buddy had fun, bought a car, went on vacations. I saved my money. He made more than I did. But I worked a double shift, worked extra. My daughter's worksheet is 10. So you're laughing. Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. We did the right thing, and we get screwed.
I appreciate
That's
that.
all right.
It's just the disdain. Oh, you worked hard? Well, guess what? Screw you. They don't want you to work hard. They want you dependent. They want the poor dependent on the powerful. That is socialism. The poor dependent on the powerful, because the powerful have the power to distribute the wealth. That is what it's all about. That's why they're sitting around in Davos saying, we must get rid of ownership. What is this ownership? They do not like, that's one of the reasons they want to get rid of Christianity, too. They don't like anything that takes the ordinary guy and says, you know what? You matter. You have a right to make decisions about your own life. Your decisions are better than the decisions of the experts. That is what they don't want because they are the expert class. The other thing that it does that really infuriates me is it basically finances through the government this credentialism that college has created. You remember when they were Obama was selling this stupid Iran deal that allows Iran to get nuclear weapons over time, and one of his guys, Ben Rhodes, went to the New York Times and says, yeah, we sold it to you because you guys don't know anything. You're stupid. You're kids. You've never covered the international scene. He was talking about credentialism. He may not have known it, but the people working at the New York Times are 25 years old. They went to the best colleges in the country. They don't know jack diddly squat about anything, but when they go marching in to the editor-in-chief's office and say, you offended me by running an op-ed that I disagree with, they have to listen to him because they need to hire people from the New York Times. It used to be reporters were lower class guys, smart guys who couldn't go to college, but they had a talent to write, and they were smart and they were literate, and they hated the powerful. They didn't care if you were Republican powerful or Democrat powerful. They just wanted to bring down the powerful. Now they are aspiring to the power class. They're credentialed elites aspiring to the powered class. So if you're part of the power, namely the Democrats, who are going to help the powerful, they're going to be on your side. This thing is also utterly lawless, is another immoral thing about it. And, this is one of the things, well, Pelosi, a year ago, she said so. This is cut 9.
People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress. Not everybody realizes that, but the president can only postpone, delay, but not forgive.
So that was then, of course, when Biden did this, she said, what a bold move. This is a great thing. She tweeted that out. Biden himself said it was pretty questionable whether he could do it. Let's put these bad things together. You've got immorality, you've got lawlessness, you've got credentialism, and ultimately you get people who are have the big credentials, but who don't believe in the law and don't believe in morality, which is enough to make you think that conservatives are right and the people at the top do not support our system of government, the very things that made us great. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, Klavan, you rapscallion. No one, you think people are trying to destroy the Constitution. Where would you get an idea like that? Well, I got this idea from the New York Times, a former newspaper, on the op-ed page, or as we like to call it, Knucklehead Row.
Oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, ho, let's go waltzing down to Knucklehead Row.
So on Knucklehead Row, an article called "The Constitution is Broken and Should Not Be Reclaimed," and it is by Ryan Dorfler and Samuel Moyn, who teach law at Harvard and Yale. When liberals lose in the Supreme Court, as they increasingly have, they usually say that the justices got the Constitution wrong, but struggling over the Constitution has proved a dead end. The real need is not to reclaim the Constitution, but instead to reclaim America from constitutionalism. Constitutions inevitably orient us to the past and misdirect the present into a dispute over what people agreed on once upon a time, not on what the present and future demand for and from those who live now. It's difficult to find a constitutional basis for abortion or labor unions in a document written largely by affluent men more than 2 centuries ago. Far better if liberal legislators could simply make a case for abortion and labor rights on their own merits without having to bother with the Constitution. Congress could simply pass a Congress Act, reorganizing our legislature in ways that are more fairly representative of where people actually live and vote, in other words, in cities. In so doing, Congress would be pretty openly defying the Constitution to get to more democratic order, and for that reason would need to insulate the law from judicial review. We don't need no stinking justices. We don't need no stinking justices telling us what we can do. A politics of the American future like this would make clear our ability to engage in the constant reinvention of our society under our own power without the illusion that the past stands in our way. This is the argument of an adolescent. Everything you do is bad, Daddy. I don't want to do that anymore. What do you know? You don't know what I'm like. You don't know what I want. It's the argument of an adolescent. But it's an adolescent who teaches at Harvard and Yale. I don't like the far right any more than I like the far left, but I fear the far left more because, the far right is wanted by the FBI, but the far left works for the FBI. The far right may sometimes be too hard on the news media, but the far left is the news media. The far right may hate the government sometimes, but the far left is the government. I'm afraid of the people with the most power. Why? Because I know people are sinful and wicked and will do the things that give them the power that they want. These shady putzes who write things like this in the New York Times, who think the Constitution, who think the past, people in the past didn't know anything, that they're smarter because they live now, Daddy. I live now, and I don't have to listen to what you said back in the olden days, Mr. James Madison, Mr. Thomas Jefferson, Mr. George Washington. Why are you telling me what to do with your stinky Constitution? These guys, these are the credentialed elite. These are the elite. And this is the reason why it's important to say, maybe those Christians had a point, like with Jane Austen, to say maybe those evangelicals had a point when they said people are sinful. Maybe they had a point when they said if we let people free, they will just use their power to get what they want, even if it's killing babies. What is it about this concept? We can't find a right. The guys honestly said we can't find a right to abortion in the Constitution. So they're saying Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided, but what they're saying was the Constitution itself was wrongly decided. It is funny. One thing that Christians know, and they knew it from the beginning, and we forgot it because we had a good time in this country. Christians had a good time in this country for a while, and they forgot the central truth of Christianity was that if you tell people that they are sinful, and if you try to live in a way that is not sinful, if you try to hit the target of your best self, of your spiritual self, ultimately, those who preach against sinfulness will be demonized by the sinful. Wasn't that great? Of course it was. You want more, so like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.